Chapter 6 of Baiting the Bears by a Self-Made Man. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 6. The Panic on the Exchange. "What was the trouble between you and Mr. Reese today?" asked Marie when they left the office together that afternoon as usual. "I didn't intend to say anything about it," said Phil, "but since you ask me, I'll tell you what the trouble was about. Enoch dropped a brick, done up in covering of wrapping paper, toward my head today when I went out to lunch." "What?" almost screamed the girl. "You can't mean that." "I do. A little bootblack across the street saw him do it." Then Phil told her the whole story. "Why, what a spiteful little wretch he is." "Little? Big, you mean? He weighs more than I do, but I could whip him without half trying." "Did you say anything to Mr. Lockwood about it?" Phil shook his head. "That isn't the way I do business. I'd like to get a chance at Enoch to take satisfaction out on his side. If there's anything I hate, it is underhanded business. Only a coward resorts to it." Marie fully coincided with Phil on that point. "He could be put in prison for doing such a thing as that," she said. "You might have been killed, or severely injured. The rascal's aiming to do me up, that's plain to see. You heard me when I was putting it straight up to him. His uncle, however, interfered, and we had a few words. Mr. Reese maintained that Enoch hadn't been near the reception room windows at all, so I had to let it go at that, though I know he was lying in order to screen Enoch." "It's too bad the way these people treat you. Mr. Lockwood ought to know," said Marie with some show of indignation. "He won't learn of it from me. I've warned Enoch to keep his hands off, and if he doesn't know enough to do so, he'll regret it. I can stand a good deal one way or another to keep out of a mix-up, but when it comes to having a brick dropped on my head, that's the limit." "I should think it was." "I think I've found out at least one reason why Weaver is sore on me." "What is it?" she asked with some curiosity. "He's jealous because I go to the bridge cars with you so often." "Indeed," she said with a little toss of her shapely head. "Do you know, while you were at lunch he came up to my desk and began to talk with me, or rather he did all the talking, for I had very little to say to him. I can't bear the man. Now what do you think he had the cheek to propose?" "What?" "Asked me if I wouldn't go to the theater with him some night this week. I was so astonished I could hardly find words to tell him that my mother wouldn't permit such a thing." "He must have been greatly disappointed," said Phil with a grin. "I can't understand how he could expect me to accept such an invitation." "Maybe he thought you couldn't resist the chance." "He won't have that excuse in the future." "I've heard that Mr. Weaver thinks himself the whole thing with the ladies." "He has found out that there are exceptions. I only hope that he will stay away from me except when he has business matters to communicate." After the brickbat incident, Phil kept a wary eye out for Enoch's movements, but young Reese, with his habitual slyness, made no outward sign of further hostilities. All the same, he was biding his time. In a few days, GW&O stock touched 70, and matters began to grow lively around the corner where that road was dealt in on the floor of the exchange. With $7,000 in prospective profits, Phil began to feel as if he was wasting his time as a clerk in a banking and brokerage office at a moderate salary. Still, he was prudent and cautious enough to realize that his new profits were only paper ones unless he sold out at once, and that he was loath to do so while the boom was in full swing. "GW&O has touched 85 and even 92 on previous occasions," he mused. "I don't see but it is just as likely to fly this time as not." So he held on to his stock and watched the indicator when he could. Next day the stock reached 74, the day after 77. When the exchange closed Saturday noon, it was at 79, or 18 points beyond where he had purchased it. Dick Ovens, who had cleared a little stake on Central Ohio at Phil's earnest solicitation, had also bought as many shares of GW&O as he could afford as soon as Phil gave him the tip. "I've got 150 shares, and I'm going to sell out tomorrow at 79, said Dick as the two boys were taking a Sunday afternoon walk up in the Bronx. $2,500 profit is good enough for me. How much longer are you going to hold on, Phil?" "I think the stock will go to 90 all right," answered Thorne. "Do you?" "I wouldn't take that chance short of a house and lot," said Ovens. "I've been in a funk all week lest the market should break and I would be one of the victims." "It's a wonder you didn't sell out then," replied Phil with a grin. "I don't know why I didn't. It must have been because I knew you were hanging on, and I was a bit ashamed to let it go in a hurry." "Thought I'd give you a roasting, eh?" "I didn't want you to have a poor opinion of my nerve," admitted Dick. "Well, I don't blame you for selling. $2,500 is a nice little stake. You can bet it is. When I get my check, I'll be a capitalist to the tune of $3,500 or so. At the present moment, I stand to win about $14,000, said Phil. Gee whiz! You want to sell and make sure of it. No, I want to clear $20,000 if I can. I may not have such a chance soon again. You're taking an awful risk, Phil. You've more nerve than I have. I might as well admit it. I'd hate to see you get it in the neck at the last moment. By the way, I'll tell you a secret. Rowland is up to his neck in this deal. I'm sure he's one of the clique that is booming the stock. He stands to win or lose a small fortune. I won't wish him any hard luck, but I shouldn't lose any sleep if I heard he got it where he got it with B&O the time he fired me for simply expressing my private opinion of the deal. You mean in the neck? I don't mean anywhere else. Monday morning came and Dick Ovens got out from under as soon as he could get his selling order to his broker. He cleared more than he expected, as GW&O opened at 80. On Tuesday noon, when the stock was up to 84, he showed Phil his check for $3,590, his profit being $2,660. Rockefeller, with all his wealth, doesn't feel half the satisfaction that I do with my little boodle, cried Dick with a cheerful grin. I guess you're right, replied Phil. Now I'm undecided as to whether I'll sell at 85 or not, but it hasn't reached 85 yet. It lacks only 1 point of it. 1 point is a whole lot sometimes. Sure it is, but not the way things are going with GW&O. Well, I wish you luck, said Dick as they parted. Thanks, old chappie. Phil had computed his winnings to date on paper at a trifle over $18,000, but he was eager to make it an even $20,000. It is this fatal grasping after just a few more dollars which has wrecked so many fortunes in Wall Street. At that moment, all the boy had to do to make sure of the $18,000 was to call up his broker on the office phone and order him to sell his stock. But he didn't do it, and the result was he got the shock of his life. At 2 o'clock, one of the clerks who had been out on a late lunch came back. Say, Thorne, there's a deuce to pay on the exchange. What do you mean? Asked Phil, a sudden lump coming up in his throat. I believe GW&O, which has been raising the dickens among the brokers last week or so, has gone to smash. Why, what's the matter? You're as white as a sheet all at once. You're not interested in any deal, are you? Curiously. Never mind. Tell me the particulars, gasped Phil, clutching at his desk. Somebody dumped 2 big blocks of the stock onto the syndicate, and I guess they couldn't handle it. It's what I've been expecting right along. Then there's a panic on the floor? I'm not sure, but it's my opinion there is. All right, said the boy, pulling himself together with a great effort. He got up and deliberately walked out to where the tickers stood, rattling away like a racehorse on the final stretch. There were several excited customers around the tape, and Phil saw he couldn't get a sight without disturbing them. Well, never mind, he muttered. The shock is over. I'll be game to the end. There was nobody in the telephone booth, so he walked in and called up his broker's office. I want Mr. Brown. He's at the exchange. How's GW&O? Pretty rocky. Has the bottom fallen out of it? I think not, but it may be at any moment. Sell me out at once, will you? All right, Mr. Thorne. I'll telephone instructions to Mr. Brown on the floor. Thank you. Goodbye. As Phil came out of the booth, Mr. Lockwood came out of his office and took the boy's place. 10 minutes later, there was a panic for fair on the floor of the exchange. Mr. Lockwood had phoned orders to his acting broker to dump 3 lots of 5,000 shares each of GW&O onto the market. The syndicate took the first under pressure. The second lot staggered them, but they managed to accept. But the third lot they couldn't handle, and GW&O went by the board. The news was on the street 2 minutes after, and in every editorial room of the daily press. The slaughter of the lambs was something fearful, while many experienced operators struggled and gnashed their teeth as they fought to escape from the crash. In the midst of it all, pandemonium reigned supreme on the floor of the stock exchange. Where was Phil's profits in this awful catastrophe? End of chapter 6.